Hi there, welcome to another edition Explain, Crisis in the Hostage Negotiation edition. So by now you might have heard the news. Hamas has announced that it is going to stop the release of hostages scheduled for Saturday until further notice. Hamas official Abu Obeida claimed that the reason for this is that Israel delayed the return of displaced Palestinians to northern Gaza, conducted airstrikes in several parts of Gaza, and didn't allow some humanitarian aid to enter the Strip, most notably fuel and caravans. Quote, according to him, Hamas did everything it committed to as part of the agreement. Therefore, the release of hostages planned for Saturday, February 15th, will be postponed indefinitely. Israel denies that any of this has occurred and says that it's just an excuse by Hamas. Defense Minister Israel Katz said Hamas's announcement is, quote, a complete violation of the ceasefire agreement. He added, I have instructed the IDF to prepare at the highest level of alert for any possible scenario in Gaza. Now, both Hamas and Israel have violated the ceasefire to some extent since it started, but nothing that either one has done has been a material breach of the agreement. There's not too much substance to what Hamas is saying. Israel is letting in about 600 trucks per day. It may not have met whatever specific numbers they have on fuel or caravans, but that isn't really a reason to put the entire hostage deal at risk. There's definitely something else going on here. Hamas had said earlier, yesterday, that, quote, if Israel doesn't advance to the second phase, it will pay a heavy price. And this, I believe, is the key to what's happening now. There has been little to no progress towards the second phase in the negotiations. Hamas is very upset about that and is using the only leverage that it has in order to get something to happen in that regard, which is the hostages. Therefore, an Israeli official told Axios, Barak Ravid, that Hamas' announcement could be a response to President Trump's Gaza takeover plan and a signal the group suspects Netanyahu won't hold serious negotiations about the second phase of the deal. Indeed, those involved in the negotiations, and that includes everyone, the mediators, Israel, and Hamas, are not surprised by this crisis. They saw it coming because of the issue of transition from phase 1 to phase 2. What certainly hasn't added to the desire that Hamas have to have the hostage deal go on without a hitch are comments that Trump made regarding his plan to remove the population of Gaza and build some sort of real estate project. He was asked for clarifications in an interview on Fox News. When asked if Palestinians could return to Gaza, he said, quote, no. They wouldn't because they're going to have much better housing. In other words, I'm talking about building a permanent place for them. So even though some members of the administration had walked it back and said that Palestinians would be able to return, Trump continues to insist that Palestinians will be ethnically cleansed from Gaza and will not be able to return. That, of course, is another reason for Hamas not to advance in a plan that would see them lose their only leverage that could prevent any of that from occurring. So this is all happening when there are 17 more hostages that are remaining in the first stage. 9 of them are believed to still be alive. Then after that, there will be 50 more hostages that are under Hamas control, of which about half are alive. And they will be released only in the second phase, which is increasingly looking like it's unlikely to actually happen. So there's really not much reason for Hamas to continue to release hostages right now. They're the only leverage it has to make the second phase occur. So the fact that they're using them now is really no surprise. And here are some of the facts. Israel was obligated to start talks on beginning the second phase on the 16th day of the first phase of the ceasefire. It is now the 22nd day, so almost a week after those talks should have began. But the delegation sent to Qatar for talks has not been given a mandate to discuss the second phase. Indeed, Israeli officials have told several news outlets that the trip to Qatar has been primarily symbolic and done at the request of the Trump administration. the delegation members have confirmed that they're not allowed to discuss the second phase of the deal during talks. And indeed, the Israeli cabinet, hasn't approved those talks and hasn't decided what the parameters for those talks and what concessions Israel is willing to make in that regard yet. That meeting is set for tomorrow. The meeting was brought up a little bit. It was supposed to take place tomorrow evening. Now it'll take place tomorrow morning, which some people have noted would give Netanyahu a good excuse to postpone his hearings in his trial. And others have noted, why doesn't he do it tonight if it's so pressing? But anyway, that's beside the point. So Israel's not negotiating because Israel hasn't decided on a strategy yet. One of the reasons it hasn't decided on a strategy yet is because it doesn't want to advance to the second round, but there is pressure on it from Trump to continue to advance to the second round and from the hostage families in a lot of Israeli society. So it's better for the coalition right now to decide not to decide. And that's why Hamas seem to have put pressure on Netanyahu to make a decision. Now, Hamas have some good reasons to try to torpedo this deal from their perspective. They only have one goal left, one major goal, which is to finish the war and have the IDF leave. They've already achieved some of their secondary goals. The withdrawal from Netzarim yesterday was a big one. The return of Gazans from the south to the north was a big one. They've got a lot of aid in, which gives them a stockpile for if the war continues. And a lot of the top Palestinian prisoners were released, which is an achievement for them. So if the deal ends now, they've pocketed several major achievements. And if they don't think they're going into a second phase, they might as well have these hostages to provide them with more leverage. And without an end to the war, releasing more hostages means that they face diminishing returns. There isn't all that much that they still need. The one thing that they need from ending this phase is an evacuation from the Philadelphia route. But it doesn't appear as though Hamas have had that much difficulty getting in weapons and reorganizing, even with the IDF at the Philadelphia route. So it doesn't look like that's enough leverage over Hamas to force them to continue to release the hostages. But I guess we will see. Now, having said all this, it is clear that Hamas would like to see a resolution to the problem. Notice the timing of the crisis. The next exchange of hostages is on Saturday. We have all seen Hamas cause many crises the day before or on the day of an exchange. They do that when they're trying to put a spanner in the works. What they're doing here is they're giving Israel and the mediators a lot of time to work this out. They're doing this on Monday. They're also doing it the day before the cabinet meeting regarding the second phase, which is going to take place on Tuesday. So this is a strategic attempt to cause a crisis that will pressure Israel into changing its position on the second phase, and will get the mediators involved with enough time to try to fix it. So everyone is saying that on all sides, that Hamas is causing this crisis early because it wants it to be resolved. But it wants it to be resolved on its own terms, of course, not on terms that the Israelis want. So Israeli negotiators believe this crisis is reversible and addressable. However, there's a huge risk that Hamas is taking here. The main reason they shouldn't be doing this, I've given a lot of reasons why it's smart from their perspective to do this, is because a lot of people in Israel don't want the deal to continue. Whether we're talking about Smotrich or whether we're talking about elements in the IDF that are very excited about the Trump deal. And they're looking for a reason to stop the ceasefire, escalate the war, and start expelling Palestinian civilians. And so they're playing with fire here. It's really a question of what happens now in terms of Trump's policy. All of this is up to Trump. If Trump gives Israel now a green light to restart the war and start expelling people, then the hostage deal may indeed be dead in the water. If Trump focuses on getting the hostages out first, which he's indicated several times that that's very important to him, then this will play in Hamas's favor. So what Trump does next is the most important thing to determine whether this is a temporary crisis or turns into the end of the ceasefire. My guess is that Trump will try to force Israel into starting negotiations on the second round, while giving them some sort of guarantees that if it fails, they'll be able to restart the war. I think that's the most likely thing. And if that's what happens, then Hamas's gamble will have paid off. But it's a very high stakes gamble indeed. Okay, so thank you for tuning in. If you like what I do here, consider supporting me on Patreon. Now also consider subscribing to my Substack as another way of supporting what I do. Also, listen to my History of the Land of Israel podcast, where I'm talking about Hezekiah's reforms. I just put out an episode a few days ago, and I'm going to put out the second part about Hezekiah's reforms in a couple of days. So a lot to look forward to there. I will be seeing you here again the next time something exciting happens.